Hello, my name is Trina Russell. The famous theorists that I chose to discuss today are Carl Rogers and Ivan Pavlov. These two gentlemen were from completely different worlds. They developed opposite counseling theories. However, they are both recognized as famous theorists, and professionals continue to use their therapeutic styles in sessions with clients every day. Carl Rogers was born in 1902 in Oak Park, Illinois. Oak Park is a suburb of Chicago. I've been there several times. It's very nice. Rogers was a psychologist. He was raised in a very strict religious home. As I said, Rogers came from a very strict religious household. His family, common practice was self-denial. They endorsed self-denial. There was no social life, no dancing, no drinking, no playing cards, no going to the theater. Rogers took an interest in scientific agriculture at the age of 12. At the age of 14, he became a student of scientific agriculture. Rogers' interest in science was definitely an advantage, and it provided an early grounding in his knowledge of scientific methodology. He learned early how experiments were conducted, how control groups were matched with experimental groups, how conditions were held constant by randomizing procedures, and how difficult it can be to test a hypothesis. Rogers went on to attend the University of Wisconsin, and he majored in agriculture. He also changed his major to religion shortly after. At the age of 20, Rogers attended a World Student Christian Conference in China. It was then that Rogers broke away from the strict religious views of his parents and adopted a more liberal Christian view. This motivated him to attend the Union Theological Seminary, which is one of the most liberal seminary schools in America at that particular time. Rogers is now emerging as a man with strong beliefs, and as a believing man, he wants to explore his beliefs. He's open for them to develop and change. When Rogers was 22 years old and a student at Union Theological Seminary, he and a number of other students formed a group to explore their own ideas. They referred to it as a group of us. The group felt that ideas were being fed to them. They wanted to explore their own questions and doubts to find out where these questions and doubts would lead. Rogers is already developing a non-directive, flexible style of exploring questions and ideas. The group itself could be termed a client-centered group because of the emphasis on what the participants wanted, the lack of authority relationships, and the significant life changes and decisions made as a result of the group experience. Rogers' personal development using non-directive exploration of ideas, his counseling theory was beginning to evolve. The theory was named client-centered therapy. The client is the director and the therapist is more of a facilitator. Rogers believed clients know what they want to change and know how to self-heal. The client seeks assistance to overcome their difficulties and control their destiny. The approach promotes a comfortable, therapeutic environment that is both non-judgmental and empathetic. It's easy to see how this form of therapy aligns with Christian values. Being empathetic is an essential part of God's calling upon our lives. The non-judgmental, non-directive, respectful collaboration, and empathetic communication style is exactly how God wants us to treat each other. I looked up this Bible verse, and I think it's a very good example. It's Galatians chapter 6, verse 2. Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Rogers contributed to the psychological community. He was one of the founders of the humanistic psychology. He was honored for his pioneering research with the Award for Distinguished Scientific Contributions by the American Psychological Association in 1956. The other famous theorist that I chose to discuss today is Ivan Pavlov, born in 1849 in Ryazan, Russia. He was a physiologist. A little bit about his background. His father was the village priest. Ivan tended the church grounds where his father was a priest. He then went on to attend Ryazan Ecclesiastical Seminary. He had planned on having a career in theology. After being introduced to the works of Charles Darwin and Ivan Sechenov, Pavlov decided to transfer to the University of St. Petersburg to study natural science. While Pavlov was a student at the university, he was influenced by one of his professors and decided to become a physiologist. That was during his third year. He also began studying how digestion works in mammals. He observed and recorded information about dogs and their digestive process. As part of his work, he began to study what triggered dogs to salivate. It should have been an easy study, but it wasn't. Dogs should have simply began drooling when presented with food. But what Pavlov discovered when he observed the dogs was that salivating had a much more far-reaching effect than he ever thought. The people who fed Pavlov's dogs were white lab coats. Pavlov noticed that the dogs began to salivate whenever they saw the lab coats, even if there was no food in sight. Pavlov wondered why the dogs salivated at lab coats and not just at food. He ran a study in which he rang a bell every time he fed the dogs. Pretty soon, just ringing the bell made the dogs salivate. That is what led to Pavlov's theory, his classical conditioning theory and operant conditioning theory. Those theories eventually led to behavioral therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy. The next slide is a short illustration, a humorous illustration of Pavlov's experiment. It's supposed to start automatically, but if it doesn't, I urge you to start it on your own. It's very cute. The cognitive behavioral style or behavior therapy is action-based. It concentrates on changing maladaptive behavior or unwanted behavior. By changing the behavior, our thoughts start to change. It also argues that we learn from our environment. We're more or less responding to a stimuli. Behavioral therapy is in line with our Christian values. It stresses to turn away from maladaptive behavior, turn away from sinful behavior. This Bible verse Corinthians chapter 10, verse 14, therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry. That is just one verse that concentrates on changing sinful behavior. There are many in the Bible. Pavlov and his theory of classical conditioning had a profound impact on the understanding of human behavior. He was awarded the Nobel Prize of Physiology for Medicine in 1904 for research pertaining to the digestive system. In conclusion, these theorists come from two different schools of thought. Behavior therapy looks for simple explanations of human behavior from a very scientific standpoint. Humanistic psychology, or client-centered, rejects the scientific method of explaining human behavior. Humanistic psychology also assumes that humans have free will. We're personal agents. We make our own decisions in life, and we don't follow deterministic laws of science. These theories are similar simply because both can be used to change maladaptive behaviors and to assist in developing a better quality of life. That concludes my presentation of Ivan Pavlov and Carl Rogers. Thank you for your time.